Good morning and welcome to Live Without Limits. Stop holding yourself back. Your breakthrough starts here. I'm Davida Shinsky, and today we are talking about where we transform your thinking so that you can transform your life. This is the podcast where we talk about transforming your thinking so that you can transform your life. Today, we're exploring a powerful idea that can completely change the way you see your past, your present, and your future. The idea is simple, but incredibly profound. There are no mistakes, only lessons. See, we don't recognize mistakes as just being a part of life because somewhere along the line we were criticized for making mistakes. Therefore, we feel as though we need to be perfect. And you know what? There is no such thing as being perfect. Everything we do, we learn from. We learn how to be the person we were meant to be, not the person someone else wants us to be. Most of us grow up believing that mistakes are something to avoid at all cost. We're taught that making a mistake means we failed, that we did something wrong, or that we somehow aren't good enough. But what if that belief is actually one of the biggest things holding you back today? What if the way things you call mistakes are actually the moments that shape you and your wisdom, your resilience, and your future success? Today, we're going to talk about why mistakes are part of growth, how the fear of mistakes keeps you stuck, and the difference between how a mistake and a lesson, how to reframe your past experiences, and how to use every setback as a stepping stone forward. By the end of the episode, I hope you'll walk away with completely different perspective on the word mistake, because when you change how you see your mistakes, then you change how you see yourself. Remember, you are the only one that can determine your life goals, because only you know what you should be doing. Each of us are unique. Each of us have a specialty. No one else can tell you how to live your life except you. All they're trying to do is relive their life and their shortcomings to be what they always wanted it to be through you. When you recognize that, then you can decide whether or not you're going to make the changes to be who you want to be and not who that person wants you to be. So now we're going to talk about why we fear mistakes. Let's start with something important. Why do people fear mistakes so much? For many people, it starts early in life. Maybe you were criticized when you got something wrong. Maybe mistakes were treated like failures instead of learning moments. Maybe you were told things like, why can't you do it right? Not how you should know better. That was a bad decision. one time, these messages create a powerful belief within us. That belief is that mistakes mean we are not capable, not smart enough, or not worthy. But here's the truth. Every single person who has ever succeeded at anything has made countless mistakes along the way. Entrepreneurs make mistakes. Writers make mistakes. Leaders make mistakes. Inventors make mistakes. The difference is not whether you made mistakes. The difference is how you responded to them. Sometimes successful people understand something most people don't. Mistakes are information. They tell you what works, what doesn't work, and what to adjust. In other words, mistakes are part of the process. How many times in school, when your grades didn't measure up, did someone make you feel as though you were stupid? So what happens? You've taken that information and you've internalized it. And what did you do when you internalized it? You started repeating all the things that someone told you. And often, what has happened is this. They have decided that you should be the one to be criticized rather than making them feel as though it allows them to make themselves feel as though they're superior to you because they knew the answer. But you know how we learn is through the mistakes we make, because none of us are perfectionists. But some of us do have that perfectionist personality where we will redo something and redo something and redo something until it's perfect. But that perfection is only in your mind because someone made you feel as though you could not be successful unless you were perfect. And often when we're talking about making mistakes, that's because someone criticized you. And why did they criticize you? Because it made them feel better about themselves, even though they probably made the same mistakes at one time or another. The difference between a mistake and failure. One of the biggest mindset shifts you can make is learning the difference between a mistake and a failure. A mistake is simply a decision that didn't produce the result you expected. That's it. It's not a judgment of your character. It's not proof that you're incapable. It's simply feedback. Failure, on the other hand, only happens when someone stops trying. If you learn, adapt, and move forward, then what happened wasn't a failure. It was a lesson. Think about learning how to walk as a child. What and when babies fall down while learning to walk, no one says, well, that baby is a failure. Falling is simply part of learning how to walk. But somewhere along the way, as adults, we forget that principle. We start believing that falling down means we should stop trying, and that belief keeps people stuck for years. This is where, when we talk about affirmations and we talk about the laws of attraction, what are we doing? We're actually talking about how to reprogram your thoughts so that you can get rid of those thoughts of failure, all those negative thoughts, because what happens, and this is where the laws of attraction really comes into it, is when you put out negative thoughts, negative things come back to you. When you put out positive thoughts, when you believe in yourself, then good things start to happen for yourself. It's all a matter of how you perceive life and how you perceive how you can change your belief in yourself and understand that making mistakes and no matter what we do is just a part of life. Accepting this, understanding this for what it is and how you can incorporate this into your daily experience and change how you see yourself and how you plan that future for yourself. Now, reframing your past. Let's talk about something powerful. Your past. Most people carry around a list of what they believe are their biggest mistakes. Maybe it's a relationship that didn't work out, a career decision that didn't go the way they hoped, a business that failed, a time you trusted the wrong person, a moment when you doubted yourself. But here's the question I want you to consider today. What if those weren't mistakes? What if those moments were actually shaping you into the person you needed to become? Your past experiences gave you wisdom, awareness, strength, and discernment. Sometimes the hardest experiences in life teach us the most valuable lessons. They teach us who we are. They teach us what we believe. They teach us what we will no longer tolerate. And they teach us how to move forward differently. Instead of asking yourself, why did this happen to me? A more powerful question is, what did that experience teach me? Because when you find that lesson, you reclaim your power. Now, let me go back and tell you something that happened to me many, many years ago. I grew up with a disability, and I also know it affects the way I walk. It affects a lot of things, and I wouldn't say I'm a beautiful person, but I remember someone asked me to spend time with someone who was blind. The first thing this guy did was he was all over me. What it is his father had been a part of the mafia, and he was in prison for some of the things that he had done. And his mother was looking for someone to marry him off to so that she could have the freedom to do the things that she wanted to do instead of spending her time taking care of her son. And someone suggested that they contact me because they knew that I also have a disability, and they just thought I was desperate. But at the time I was in college, I had certain goals of what I wanted to do. And yes, I wanted to marry. But when someone told me they saw me as beautiful, or when I wanted them really looking at me and seeing me and saying it because it's something that they really believed, not because it was something that someone told them, these are the things you say to someone. And so I knew from the beginning that that relationship was never for me. And I only spent that one afternoon with him. The funny thing was, I remember running into someone a couple of years later and they go, "Oh, I thought you got married." Well, that's because they probably knew about this particular date I had, and they probably thought that, wow, I was going to be so overwhelmed by all the things he was saying that I was just going to want to pursue that relationship. When, I knew myself well enough to know exactly what my needs were, exactly what I wanted. And I also knew that I came from a home where that was very toxic, very negative, and it would have been easy for me to end up with someone that said the things I needed to hear just because they said it. But I was smart enough and had been in psychology long enough and taken the courses and learned about the different modalities and to understand where I was coming from. And then years later took training in psychodrama, where I was able to actually begin to understand where all of these feelings and emotions came from. And the fact was that I was smart enough to know up front that that would have been a mistake for me to end up in that kind of relationship. The thing was, yes, it was a learning experience simply because it showed me what I really wanted out of a relationship and not to just accept something just because. Also, it would have been a conflict in religion because of what my beliefs are, and his beliefs and the way he was raised were very, very different. And the thing was that they were pushing him into becoming a singer, not because he had the talent, but because his father had connections in the mafia and they could get him into the nightclubs. And it was something to give him to do. And I don't even remember this guy's name, but I do know that he was never a successful singer, because those who are those who are multi-talented. And today in that industry, to compete in that industry, you have to be multi-talented. You have to be the songwriter. You have to be the musician. You have to be the singer. You have to know and have the talent to recognize it. But pushing someone into an industry just because that it was something where they could get him jobs. Well, I guarantee you that whoever he married, they're just taking care of him. And whatever money the family had that they were able to steal by being connected to the mob, that's probably what he's living off of today. So even though I've struggled financially, at least I know where I come from. And yes, I've made mistakes in life, but I've used those mistakes as a way to learn on what's right for me, what's not right for me, and what I should be doing. And now we're going to talk about the fear that keeps people stuck. Because what happens is when you have certain beliefs, that even though you have goals and you start working on that goals, all of a sudden you will put the brakes on. And those brakes will keep you from reaching your goals simply because you are stuck. So one of the greatest obstacles to success isn't lack of ability. It's fear specifically fear of making mistakes. Think about how many dreams never happen because someone is afraid of getting it wrong. People delay starting a business. They delay writing a book. They delay sharing the ideas, not because they can't do it, but because they're afraid of making a mistake. Here's the reality. Trying to avoid mistakes often creates the biggest mistake. Never trying. Growth requires experimentation. Progress requires movement. Acknowledgement sometimes means getting things wrong before you get them right. But every attempt teaches you something valuable. Every step forward gives you more clarity. Every lesson moves you closer to success. Now, one of the things I want to say is when I started this podcast 20 years ago, this industry was in its infancy. And I remember someone setting up a podcast on communication, but never even started the podcast. Why? Because he felt he would never find enough topics to talk about. So therefore, what did he do? He gave up before he even started. And I remember talking to him about it. And he goes, well, I thought wouldn't have enough topics. Well, you know what? His topic was communication. There's always something you can talk about in communication, because even what we're talking about, making mistakes here, that's communication. That's where someone has told you were a failure, or told you couldn't do something, and then you internalize that to believe that you couldn't do it. And therefore, he didn't even make the attempt to even start his podcast. But what he did was he paid someone $5,000 to teach them how to do a system to be successful in a specific field. Well, you know what? That person was making money teaching someone how to do something that they probably didn't have to pay him to teach them how to do. But they believed that because he was being successful, that he must know more than they do. And yet, he could have built a following through his podcast, because we started on Blog Talk Radio, and Blog Talk Radio back then, it was just known as internet radio, and it was all just audio. There wasn't video involved in it. Then Apple was the company that coined the term podcast, and they coined it because video started being included in how you reach the public who listens to your podcast, because people are more visual and people will, rather than listening to something. But the idea was that when you were in your car and listening to a radio, why not listen to a podcast where you're learning something and at the same time getting where you want to go? Because how many times have you seen people, when they're traveling on the road, use an audio program that they plug into their radio, where they're actually listening to someone, a recording of a book, where they can read the book or hear the book through an audio at the same time. That's why if you have a book, making it an audio book is so important, because you're leaving money on the table when you don't recognize how you can incorporate all these things into your business. The growth mindset. People who achieve extraordinary things usually share one powerful mindset. They see life as a process of learning. Instead of asking, did I fail? They ask, what did I learn? This is known as the growth mindset. A growth mindset believes that abilities develop through effort, learning, and persistence. Someone with a growth mindset understands that every challenge is an opportunity to grow stronger. Think about athletes. When athletes lose a game, they don't simply give up. They review what happened. They analyze what needs improvement. And then they come back stronger. The same principle implies in life. Your experience are consistently giving you feedback. The question is, are you willing to listen and learn? So see, you have the ability to choose whether or not you use a failure as a learning experience, or whether or not you're going to allow something to stop you in your tracks and keep you from reaching your goals, turning mistakes into momentum. So how do you turn mistakes into growth? Here are a few powerful questions that you can ask yourself when something doesn't go as planned. What did this experience teach me? Every experience contains a lesson. Your job is to find it. What would I do differently next time? Learning means making adjustments. Each lesson gives you new insight. How can the experience make me stronger? Difficult experiences often develop in, resilience. Are you resilient? They show you what you're capable of overcoming. How can the lesson help someone else? Well, for one thing, it teaches us. And when it teaches us, what is it doing? It's helping us to see and recognize. Sometimes the greatest purpose in your challenges is to help others navigate their own. When you share your lessons, you transform pain into purpose. Before we wrap up today's episode, I want you to think about something. Think about one experience in your life that you've labeled a mistake. Now ask yourself this question. What did that experience teach me? Maybe it taught me to trust your intuition. Maybe it taught you to set stronger boundaries. Maybe it taught you resilience. Or maybe it led you to the path you're on today, because sometimes the very things we call mistakes are actually redirects. They move us away from the wrong path and toward the right one. So today, I want you to leave with this thought. You are not defined by your mistakes. You are defined by what you learn from them. Every lesson makes you wiser. Every challenge makes you stronger. And every step forward moves you closer to the life you're capable of creating. Remember, there are no mistakes, only lessons guiding you toward growth. So thank you for joining me today on Live Without Limits. Stop holding yourself back. Your breakthrough starts here. And until next time, keep learning, keep growing, and keep living without limits.